Can we talk about Europa? Is there so maybe can you talk about the intuition, the hope that people have about life being on Europa? Maybe also what are the things we know about it? What are things to you that are interesting about that particular moon of Jupiter?
Sure. Yeah, Europa is, from many perspectives, one of the really interesting places in the solar system among the solar system moons. So there are a few. There's a lot of interest in looking for or understanding the potential for life to evolve in the subsurface oceans. I think it's fairly widely accepted that the chances of life evolving on the surfaces of really anything in the solar system is very low. The radiation environment is too harsh, and there's just not liquids on the surface of most of these things, and it's canonically accepted that liquids are required for life. And so the subsurface oceans, in addition to maybe Titan's atmosphere, the subsurface oceans of the icy satellites are one of the most plausible places in the solar system for life to evolve. Europa and Enceladus are interesting because for many of the big satellites, so Ganymede and Callisto, also satellites of Jupiter, also are thought to have subsurface oceans. But they have these ice shells, and then there's an ocean underneath the ice shell. But on those moons or on Ganymede, we think that there's another ice shell underneath, and then there's rock. And the reason that that is a problem for life is that your ocean is probably just pure water because it's trapped between two big shells of ice. So Europa doesn't have this ice shell at the bottom of the ocean, we think. And so the water and rock are in direct interaction. And so that means that you can basically dissolve a lot of material out of the rock. You potentially have this hydrothermal activity that's injecting energy and nutrients for life to survive. And so this rock water interface is considered really important for the potential habitability.
As a small aside, you kind of said that it's canonically assumed that water is required for life. Is it possible to have life like in the volcano? I remember people were like a National Geographic program or something kind of hypothesizing that you can really have life anywhere. So as long as there's a source of heat, a source of energy, do you think it's possible to have life in a volcano, like no water?
I think anything's possible. I think so. Water, it doesn't have to be water. That's sort of, you can tell, as you identified, I phrased that really carefully. It's canonically accepted that because we recognize that, scientists recognize that we have no idea what broad range of life could be out there. And all we really have is our biases of life as we know it. But for life as we know it, it's very helpful to have, or even necessary to have some kind of liquid and preferably a polar solvent that can actually dissolve molecules, something like water. So the case of liquid methane on Titan is less ideal from that perspective. But, liquid magma, if it stays liquid long enough for life to evolve, you have a heat source, you have a liquid, you have nutrients. In theory, that checks your three classic astrobiology boxes.
That'd be fascinating. I mean, it'd be fascinating if it's possible to detect it easily. How would we detect if there's life on Europa? Is it possible to do in a non-contact way from a distance through telescopes and so on? Or do we need to send robots and do some drilling?
I think realistically, you need to do the drilling. So Europa also has these long tectonic features on its surface where it's thought that there's potential for water from the ocean to be somehow making its way up onto the surface. And you could imagine some out there scenario where there's bacteria in the ocean. It's somehow working its way up through the ice shell. It's spilling out on the surface. It's being killed by the radiation, but your instrument could detect some spectroscopic signature of that dead bacterium. But that's, that's many ifs and assumptions.
That's a hope, because then you don't have to do that much drilling. You can collect from the surface.
Right, or even, I'm thinking even remotely.
Remotely. Yeah. That's sad that there's a single cell civilization living underneath all that ice trying to get up. trying to get out.
So Enceladus gives you a slightly better chance of that because Enceladus is a moon of Saturn,
Hmm.
and it's broadly similar to Europa in some ways. It's an icy satellite. It has a subsurface ocean that's probably in touch with the rocky interior, but it has these massive geysers at its south pole where it's spewing out
Oh,
material
nice.
that appears to be originating all the way from the ocean. And so in that case, you could potentially fly through that plume and scoop up that material and hope that at the velocities you'd be scooping it up, you're not destroying any signature of the life you're looking for. But let's say that you have some ingenuity and can come up with a way to do that, it potentially gives you a more direct opportunity, at least, to try to measure those bacteria directly.
Can you tell me a little more on how do you pronounce it? Salas
Enceladus.
Enceladus. Can you tell me a little bit more about Enceladus? Like we've been talking about way too much about Jupiter. Saturn
Not
doesn't get
enough,
enough love.
really.
Not enough. Saturn doesn't get as much love. So what's Enceladus? Is that the most exciting moon of Saturn?
Depends on your perspective. It's very exciting from a astrobiology perspective. I think Enceladus and Titan are the two most unique and interesting moons of Saturn that definitely both get the most attention, also from the life perspective.
So what's more likely, Titan or Enceladus for life? If you were to bet all your money in terms of like investing, which to investigate, what are the difference between the two that are interesting to you?
Yeah, so the potential for life in each of those two places is very different. So Titan is the one place in the solar system where you might imagine, again, all of this is so speculative, but you might imagine
Great.
life evolving in the atmosphere. So from
Whoa.
a biology perspective, Titan is interesting because it forms complex organic molecules in its atmosphere. It has a dense atmosphere. It's actually denser than Earth's. It's the only moon that has
What?
an atmosphere denser than Earth's.
That's cool.
And it's got tons of methane in it. What happens is that methane gets irradiated, it breaks up, and it reforms with other things in the atmosphere. It makes these complex organic molecules, and it's effectively doing prebiotic chemistry in the atmosphere.
While still being freezing cold.
Yes.
Okay. What would that be like? Would that be pleasant for humans to hang out there? It's just really cold.
There's nowhere in the solar system that would be
Okay.
pleasant for humans. It would be cold. You couldn't breathe the air.
But colonization wise, if there's an atmosphere, isn't that a big plus? Or still a
Sure.
ton of radiation? Okay, so okay, so Titan, that's a really nice feature that the life could be in the atmosphere because then it's that might be remotely observable, or certainly is more accessible if you visit. Okay, so what about Enceladus? So that would be still in the ocean.
Right. And Enceladus has the advantage, like I said, of spewing material out of its south pole so you could collect it. But it has the disadvantage of the fact that we don't actually really understand how its ocean could stay frozen, or sorry, could stay globally liquid over the age of the solar system. And so there are some models that say that it's going through this cyclical evolution where the ocean freezes completely and thaws completely, and the orbit sort of oscillates in and out of these eccentricities. And in that case, the potential for life ever occurring there in the first place is a lot lower because if you only have an ocean for 100 million years, is that enough time?
And it also means there might be mass extinction events if it does occur.
Right.
And then it just freezes.
Yes.
Again, very sad, man. This is very depressing. All that like slaughter of life elsewhere.